Of all the nations on earth, only one possesses hair that defies gravity. Tight helix formations that rise towards the sun, resisting the natural pull of Earth itself. This unique trait, found among people of melanin, the so called black people, is more than just a simple genetic expression. It's the marker of a history like no other. From the heights of powerful African empires to the depths of slavery and colonialism, black hair has always been at the center of attention and controversy. It has been admired, politicized, and suppressed. But the question is why? Why? It's just hair, right? So why? Why our hair? For most of us, what we know about our hair today is shaped by modern history, by slavery, colonialism, and the natural hair movement. But what if this story is older than that? What if the Bible, the best selling book of all time, holds deeper answers to the significance of our hair? To the way black people today engage with their hair, whether it is with pride, conflict, or resistance, reflect some type of ancestral connection to the biblical customs and trends? Now, I know for some of you, this idea may seem far-fetched, even bizarre. For others, however, it might actually confirm what you've always suspected. But irrespective of where you stand on this spectrum, I believe that it is something that is definitely worth exploring. From the Nazarite law to priestly codes to direct punishment from the hand of the divine, hair held deep spiritual and social significance in the scriptures. And in this video, we are going to investigate the evidence. We are going to be comparing the biblical accounts of hair with the historical and modern experiences of black people. Let's see what we uncover. The Bible holds a place unlike any other book in human history. More than 2.5 million people, nearly a third of the world's population, look at it as their guide, shaping their cultures, laws, and identities across generations. But within its pages are not only stories about faith and survival, but also very vivid, clear descriptions of the people themselves, their customs, their appearance, their way of life, and of all the physical traits that speak to their identity, few are more significant than their hair. The Nazarite vow and Samson's locks. Our investigation begins with the Nazarite vow, first introduced in Numbers chapter 6 verse 5. All the days of the vow of his separation there shall no razor come upon his head. He shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. Now the Hebrew word here is pera. And what I want to highlight is that this word does not literally mean locks. It means hair that is left untouched, uncut, untrimmed, uncombed. Hair basically that is left unmanipulated. In other words, a Nazarite was commanded to let their hair grow freely without interference. Now, to understand what that looks like, I think we need to consult science, because hair behaves differently based on its structure. So, if we're looking at straight hair, when straight hair is left uncombed and uncut, it tends to grow long and downward. It may tangle, it may experience some matting, but it's usually in loose clumps versus, let's say, rope-like structures. Curly and or tightly coiled hair, on the other hand, grows outward, not downward. When left alone, the bends and zigzags in each strand creates friction, causing the hair to naturally interlock. Over time, these sections bind together into rope-like strands that we call locks today. So while the vow itself says do not cut, the result of obeying that command is very different depending on the hair type. For straight hair, the outcome would be long hair, and some strands may experience tangling. But for tightly coiled hair, the outcome is locks forming naturally. The creation of locks is inevitable. This is where the story of Samson reinforces this point. Judges chapter 16 describes his hair as the 7 locks of his head. The Hebrew word here, maklafot, could be translated as interwoven sections, plaits, or strands. Some translations say locks, others say braids, but the key detail is this. Delilah was able to weave his locks into a loom. This is Judges chapter 16 verses 13. And later, shave off 7 distinct locks. Judges chapter 16 verses 19. This indicates and highlights that his hair had not just grown long, it had formed into defined heavy sections. Taking into consideration the context as well as the diction utilized in the Nazarite vow and in Samson's story, 2 things are clear. Number 1 is that the Nazarite vow required the hair to be left unmanipulated. And what Samson's story brought out is the fact that in its unmanipulated state, his hair was able to produce 7 strong locks. And that quality, that ability, that trait is likely to be attributed to hair that is tightly coiled, hair that grows outward towards the sun, and hair that forms locks naturally, which would be Afro-textured hair. And while braids are possible with many hair types, locks forming naturally from untouched, unmanipulated growth align most directly with Afro-textured hair. Our next piece of evidence comes from Song of Solomon 5:11, which describes the male beloved in striking detail. His head is as the most fine gold, his locks are like clusters, black as a raven. In English, this is often simplified into a single phrase like, his hair is wavy and black, or his locks are bushy. But the Hebrew uses several words, each adding depth. Kevitzotav from kevutsa, meaning clusters, bunches, groupings. The same word used for clusters of grapes or palm branches. This suggests hair that grows in dense groupings or tight bunches. Taltalim, meaning coils, piled curls, or interwoven locks. It emphasizes the texture, not straight or flat, but curled and coiling, those helix formations. And then we have Shakor Kaorev, literally meaning black as a raven. A specific image, not just dark, but jet black. So in Hebrew, we don't just have one vague word for hair. We have a description that layers density with the word clusters, texture with the word coils, and color, which is the jet black. This makes the picture much clearer. Hair that appears in thick bunches, tightly coiled curls, and deeply black in color. The comparison to clusters of grape reinforces the idea of hair that springs up and out, grouped and full. Over time, though, translations have softened this. Where the King James Version says bushy black locks, many modern versions flattened it to wavy hair. That change shifts the mental image from thick, clustered curls to looser waves. This is exactly the kind of descriptive language that aligns more closely with Afro-textured hair. The next piece of evidence comes from the story of Absalom, King David's son. What you'll notice if you've read this portion is that the Bible goes out of its way to highlight his appearance and most of all, his hair. In 2 Samuel chapter 14 verses 25 to 26, we read, "Now in all Israel, there was no one so much to be praised for his handsomeness as Absalom. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. And when he cut the hair of his head, for it was at the end of every year that he cut it, because it was heavy on him, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels by the king's weight." 200 shekels is estimated at nearly 5 pounds of hair. That detail is extraordinary. The text doesn't just say he had long hair. It says that it was so heavy he had to cut it yearly, and then it proceeds to give us the actual weight. This tells us that Absalom's hair had thickness, density, and volume beyond what, let's say, a straight to hair texture or straighter fine hair could produce. Of course, as we did with the previous verses, we will look into the Hebrew. The Hebrew word for heavy is kaved, meaning massive or burdensome. This word alone gives insight into the physical description of his hair's density. And unlike the passages about Samson or Solomon, most English translations preserve this word clearly, keeping the emphasis on how substantial Absalom's hair was. Later, this same hair actually became the cause of his downfall. In 2 Samuel chapter 18 verse 9, as he fled from battle, Absalom's head caught fast in the oak and he was left hanging between heaven and earth. Most traditions understand this to mean that his hair became entangled in the branches, and if you are to imagine what this would look like based on different hair textures, those who may have had an afro or those who would have worn an afro, you know what it's like when you have your hair out and how easily things get stuck into it. Now imagine Absalom with his great big fro or his great big massive hair as the verse describes it, and the likelihood of that hair getting stuck in the branches of a tree compared to, let's say, another hair texture. I think the image is clear. Thick, abundant, and outwardly growing hair can easily snag and hold, just as the text describes. And Absalom's story not only emphasizes the weight of his hair, but also the volume and texture, enough to entangle him fatally in the oak. Once again, the evidence points to hair that is full-bodied and coiled, not that of a straighter configuration. When we place these accounts side by side, the language is consistent. Nazarites with uncut hair, described as locks. Samson, whose strength was tied to his 7 distinct locks. Solomon's beloved with clustered coiling black curls. Absalom with hair so heavy, so massive that it weighed nearly 5 pounds, and so abundant that it got caught in a tree. The diction, locks, clusters, coils, heavy, black, massive, consistently points to hair that is thick, textured, and voluminous. And this brings us back to the question we began with. Why? Why has hair carried so much meaning for Black people throughout history? Admired, politicized, suppressed, and reclaimed? These biblical accounts suggest that the story of textured hair stretches back much further than modern times. The way we interact with our hair, in pride, in conflict, or in resistance, may echo patterns described long ago in scripture. In part 2, we'll move beyond description into meaning, exploring how hair carried covenant weight, why uncut hair symbolized holiness, and how these ideas connect with cultures today. From the Rastafarians linking their locks to the Nazarite vow and the tribe of Judah, to prophetic warnings about women's hair, to the painful history of Black women's hair under slavery and beyond. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for staying locked in. Part 2 will be up soon, so ensure that you're subscribed and you hit the notification bell so that when the video drops, you'll be there, ready and aware. If you learned something new, definitely share it with somebody else, and I have quite a few videos on my channel, so you can go check them out. And yeah, until next time, shalom shalom, and most importantly, shalom. Thank you for tuning in to Melanin Archives.